I fucking love Dune. I'm telling you right now, if you're looking for some in-depth review, video essay, or an analysis by a pretentious film school graduate, this is not that kind of video. Although I am a pretentious film school graduate, that is completely beside the point. When it comes to movies, I am a fan first. A passionate fan who wants to talk about why I fucking love Dune. But before we get to that, I gotta talk about why I love cinema. I love all kinds of movies. I try to watch all kinds of movies. I love musicals, rom-coms, horror movies. I love good movies, and I even love bad movies to an extent. I just appreciate the amount of hard work and creativity that goes into bringing films to life. The passion, the vision, everything coming together. Sometimes, a lot of times, it doesn't always work, but when it does, oh boy, it's beautiful. And this is the category that Dune falls into. I've been contemplating on making a video on Dune Part 1 for some time, but I never really knew where to begin. Every idea I came up with ended up being about how good the visuals are, how amazing each and every single cast member is in their performance, and yeah, sounds like a basic review. A video I've done many times over, but I wanted a little more out of it, and it doesn't help that I haven't read the Dune books. Doesn't help that I'm not very good at this movie reviewing thing, but that doesn't stop many other YouTubers, so why should it stop me? Woke bullshit! The main reason I found it so difficult is because Dune Part 1 is essentially half a movie. I didn't really feel confident enough to talk about half a movie. So now with the release of Dune Part 2, I feel a little safer in saying that Dune, as a whole, is a masterpiece. If you haven't seen Dune, it's honestly a hard movie to recommend because it depends entirely upon your taste. Some people love it, others fall asleep during it. These films are not for everybody, nor should they be. It's understandable to be turned off by this kind of film, so I guess I can recommend at least giving them a try. I had no clue what Dune was when I sat down to watch Part 1 in theaters, and I was pleasantly surprised back in 2021. Maybe you will be as well. I didn't think I'd be sitting here gushing about the films like I am right now, but it is what it is. And I don't understand it. Besides cool cinematography, Part 1 should come off as pretty bland, and on paper, I should not like this movie. Most of the characters can come off as flat, monotonous. Every single word of dialogue in the film is some kind of exposition. The pacing is incredibly slow, and yet I absolutely love this movie. Every single time I've seen it, I get immersed into the world almost immediately. It's not really a character-driven story, and the plot isn't anything super complex. It's just a bunch of space politics, religious prophecies, with this chosen one type plot that we've seen play out in films many times over, but it's presented in a way that feels so true to itself. The film takes itself completely seriously, which is definitely not for everybody, but if you allow yourself to really get immersed into the world of Dune, everything becomes so much more rewarding. The story in Part 1 isn't anything crazy, but the atmosphere, the presentation are what really makes Dune Part 1 stand out in the way that it does. Dune Part 2, on the other hand, is a much more straightforward film. It switches up and focuses almost entirely on the characters, their beliefs, and of course it expands even more on the world that we were introduced to in Part 1, but while I think Part 2 has better writing, it doesn't hit in the same way that Part 1 does. Part 2 has a lot more action, more character intimacy, and frankly, it's a lot more focused of a movie. The atmosphere and tone of Part 1 just feel like it's on a different level. Part 1 serves as an excellent introduction. Part 2 serves to flesh out more of what we were introduced to in Part 1. The first film can be a lot of characters just saying out loud what certain things do at all times, why it's important to have this thing and to do that thing. With Part 2, you already know the world, you know what it's like, you know what it consists of. So the film spends more of its time focusing on the inner conflict of Paul, the growth of his relationship with the Fremen, with Chani, and the aftermath of the events that unfolded in Part 1. And because of that shift in focus, it allows the film to breathe a lot more and present these characters in a way that makes you feel for them. While there's still plenty of exposition, it doesn't detract detract from the story or the characters. These two films come together to create probably one of the best sci-fi stories that I've had the pleasure of watching. People have said it before, and I do not think it's an exaggeration in any way to say that Dune is essentially our modern day Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. It's a film made with pure passion and care, and it sets a new bar for blockbuster filmmaking. And all that is because of this man, Denis Villeneuve. I hope I'm saying his name right. A man who I think deserves to be in the conversation as one of the greatest filmmakers working today. His track record speaks for itself. Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, Prisoners. I have yet to see a bad film from Denis, and what I love about him is his approach to telling stories visually. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and with Villeneuve's films, there are moments, long stretches without dialogue, and yet the emotion feels powerful through the frame. With Dune, that is very much the case. Honestly, there are not a whole lot of lines in the film that really stick out to me, but it's the visual presentation that continues to play over and over in my head. Everything with the world of Arrakis feels so authentic, and that's because of the care and dedication from the crew into bringing the story of Dune to life. Watching the behind the scenes, it's actually mind-blowing how much was done in camera on these massive, larger-than-life sets built by so many talented people. Details that we as an audience wouldn't even pick up on are scattered everywhere. Dune really has that feeling of movie magic because it's so difficult to tell what's been done on sets, what's been filmed outdoors in a real desert. You genuinely cannot tell. Arrakis feels real, it feels lived in, and it feels alive. Looking at the sequence where Paul learns to ride a sandworm in part 2, you cannot convince me that this shit was not done for real. Looks like they got a real fucking giant worm for him to ride. I think general audiences, critics, and moviegoers as a whole don't really show enough respect for the hardworking men and women that dedicate hours, days, weeks into building sets, props, costumes, all the focus of immersion. Truly, respect to each and every single person that worked on both Dune films. It's not even just the sets and costumes, but Dune really benefits from its cinematography. People that find Dune boring should at least admit that these films look gorgeous. Director of photography Greg Fraser, I hope I said his name right, is probably one of the greatest cinematographers living right now. He's worked on Rogue One, The Batman, most recently The Creator, and all of which visually look phenomenal. I don't know what it is, but the man just has an eye for stunning visuals. A lot of the shots in Dune are so memorable, so visually stunning. I think based on cinematography alone, it makes these films so iconic. The film has so many big, larger-than-life moments, but the camera also knows when to be close and intimate. I'm truly just amazed by how Dune was brought to life. What I really love about Dune is the boldness. A lot of people thought these films were destined to fail, but they took a leap of faith and went all in to bring the project to life. It's not just the incredible story, visuals, and groundbreaking performances, but the journey of the film behind the scenes, the huge sets, filming in a real desert and blending that reality with visual effects to make Arrakis feel tangible. I fucking love Dune.